Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the GitGud EU Fight for Redemption. There's a lot of teams vying for very few positions, but to cast this beatdown, I'm Dor, and I'm joined by the always wonderful Moxie. Moxie, we've been chatting a bit, but it's bound to be a good day, isn't it?
Yeah, it's going to be a strange one though, because a lot of fast-paced Overwatch, we only get to see all of these teams for one map. It doesn't even matter if you cannot take a control map. It's only a control map that we're going to be seeing in play today.
Yeah, and a very interesting version of a control map. It's worth noting there's a little bit of a special little indication in the rules that we're playing at a 70% tick rate. You want to kind of explain for us what that means?
So it means that a lot of these fights are going to have just a little bit more slowness to them, and teams are really going to have just a little bit more of an opportunity to really showcase their talent, and not only that, build up to ultimates. So you'll be seeing that the most when teams come out of this first fight with that defeat, when they have to try and top up their composition, they actually get a shot to rebuild ultimates and even out that footing just a little bit.
Yeah, just a way to make this one map format a little bit more competitive. I really enjoy it, right? The maps are also going to be completely randomly chosen. So I think this is as fair as it gets for a one map series. And I'm really interested to see how the dynamic of control points change, especially with things like Li Zhang, where the Symmetra strats can be really prevalent. It gives you a bit more time to build up those ultimates to kind of flex onto other things. So whether or not the team's taken into account is actually going to be really interesting.
Well, it's going to be Nepal Village up first with Ray Dragons on the left and Winton's in the red on the right. And it's interesting you talk about that Symmetra play because we do see a lot of Symmetra on control point where you just go for that initial out of spawn teleporter. But on Village, you can actually keep that Symmetra in your composition if you're able to wrestle control of the point into your possession first. You can set up some pretty nasty traps with those Symmetra turrets placed alongside the wall, but if Ray Dragons do go with this Reaper and Genji, you are going to have a little bit more mobility to try and get around them. So it's probably going to be better going for something that has just a little bit more pick potential outside of just that environmental status.
Yeah, I mean, well, we've talked a lot about what they're running right now, but let's talk about what they're not running. And it's not a May Reaper. It's not a May Symmetra. The compositions that have dominated on Village for so long are kind of being shifted away from, especially with these recent Brawl nerfs, the Brigitte now not being nearly as powerful. You kind of lose a lot of that point presence that those teams were relying
Now
on.
arriving at
So,
Yijiang
map
Tower.
change. We're going to Leisure.
We were just gonna lose Nepal! The entirety of Nepal is just wiped away. Everyone knows Nepal does not exist. Oasis does not exist. It's only Li Shang. And the gods of Overwatch, if anyone tries to play any other map, will immediately amend that mistake by just slotting you straight into Control Center. And this is where, even though that Brawl composition has sort of faded away into the ether after those last couple of changes coming onto live, this is where you can still run Mei, because Mei can be such a terror if you're able to win that first fight and then move up to choke, and you just have that prime position to wall the team up, separate them, and not really even allow them a chance to get a fair fight as the round just keeps ticking and ticking and ticking.
Absolutely, and as well, one other thing to mention on this map, other than the May, Junkrat has such a great time playing on this map. We see Skeeto already locking it in, and that spam damage is going to be a real threat to Ray Dragon anytime they try and set up.
Yeah, but Ray Dragons, they're going to be running a Zarya into this, so you do have that trade-off whenever you've got the Zarya Junkrat matchup. Junkrat gets a lot of spam damage, but that Zarya is going to be pretty much always at max charge, and so Wintons are going to have to do the front line and hope that Skeeto is able to just annoy the backline to pick up his chance to get on the line.
Oh, the first engagement comes in, the spam damage is starting to add up. Winston's making their way forward, but realize very quickly they do not have the firepower to match the Zarya on the other side. We're putting in so much damage on the Genji. The Rhino is his first back space surely though. In fact, he already has lost his shield. Now is Basta has to give this space away, and with that, Ray Dragon will be the first player to stand on top of this point. Skeeto dropped extremely low in the back line, being dashed at by Inoki, who finally is going to be finding that first frag. He was trading it out for Osprey. That's exactly what they need to open the fight. Follow that one up with more pressure from Ray Dragon. Without that Junkrat in your way, you have free reign over the front line.
But look at the blitz on that Zarya. We talked about it. The spam damage means that is going to be constantly charged up, constantly doing damage, and building up to that Graviton extremely quickly, going to have it in this next engagement, and Inoki's got a blade. Laddie, this poor Lucio has not had the chance to build up the barrier that Winter needs, so they're swapping Winter onto McCree to try and get the flashbang to make sure that they can survive this blade combination coming through.
Yeah, Skeeto's gonna have to use this tire very aggressively, but he can't even get it off before the grab Dragon Blade combo comes out. Inoki, it's like Christmas in July for this man. Coming in, just picking up his present at the front door.
Oh, Winton's. They tried to go for the swap onto the McCree to deal with that Genji, but it just was not enough, and now you've reset your ultimate charge as well. But remember, that slightly slower tick rate means that only 30% of the map has passed for Ray Dragons, and it's been 2 fights for these guys. Yes, coming into that Graviton is going to be the opener that this team needs.
So they have the time to build up those ultimates. Mayhas, though, does need to get up, and they do need to get in unscathed. Starting out with the Coalescence, though, Ray Dragon are not giving them time to do so. They move in aggressively to get shattered for their sins. And Miki, though, the Coalescence did so much damage, and with Sam going down on the Reinhardt, Ray Dragon no longer have that main tank to sit behind, and Skeeto is going to have a field day on the high ground as long as he can survive against the Genji, but he can't! Goes down to Inoki, and that opens up the door for Wolves to go ham on point. Alex gets there just in time, but the Reaper is finally taken care of by Mayhaw, so now the Reinhardt versus Reinhardt battle will ensue. The main tank that goes down first will likely be the one that loses the point.
Well, Ray Dragons are going to have a really important absence in this next fight, as Scary's used the Sandfire in that last engagement, and Mayhaw has been holding onto the Graviton.
Yeah, the Graviton Surge is going to be important, but this fight itself isn't over. Inoki has charged up another blade, and we're starting to see this newer Genji. It's sort of brawl ability. It's not just useful with the blade. He's able to give really lots of value in that fight.
Oh, and Winston's found no value in all of those engagements, even when they were winning, even when they had a little bit of a presence on the point, they weren't able to get the flip going through, and so Ray Dragons have been slowly, steadily building up percentage and slowly keeping Winston's at this choke.
And now they've got to get through it one more time. Mayhaso has the Graviton that we talked about in the previous fight, trying to deal with the Coda Calypso, trying to even beat him to the Graviton, chucks it in immediately, and Winston's are not getting nearly aggressive enough. Deadeye from Dunda does manage to catch 2 out, but it's going to be traded out for just as many, if not more. Here's Skeeto trying to touch the point at 89%, but this is bound to go the way of Ray Dragon.
And Winston's, you have one final fight, but you just threw away your best chance at cleanup for both the Graviton and the Shadow, because Skeeto has not got that barrage online, and so Shadow can come through, but there's no follow through.
The counter shatter from Sam is going to be there for the follow through from Winton, but again, they just can't find the footing that they need to get onto this point. Ray Dragon have had the ultimate advantage, they've had the player advantage, they've had the positional advantage this entire match. Winton's have got to find another way in.
I mean, you've got to ask yourself, when that Shadow comes through and it picks up about 4 bodies on the side of Ray Dragons just into the floor, if you'd had a Deadeye, that would have been a difference. That would have been the decider that allows you to actually get those picks coming in your favor, because as it was, you shattered, but the Moira is still there, still healing everyone up, and the Lucia is still doing that AoE. And oh, this is a terrifying combination that every single team is going to be so worried about. D.Va may have been the one buffed in the recent patch, but Zarya at the moment is so strong in Graviton combinations with Genjis and Dry Blades. You don't need a nano boost if everyone's just chucked up in a ball and they can't run away.
And I think you mentioned the Graviton Surge, and the ultimate economy is going to be extremely important today, right? You're only playing one map. You get one chance to take it over, and I think that's actually a really interesting dynamic to have, because when you have so little time, you can actually hold on to the ultimate economy for that long. You can roll it out for the entire 100%, even at that 70% tick rate, which honestly did feel extremely sluggish. Winton's weren't able to grab it back.
Yeah, and Winton's, they tried to swap up their composition. As soon as they saw that the Junkrat was really allowing Coda Clips to just be hypercharged on that Zarya for so long, they swapped him off to a Pharah, but that means that you had to have someone go onto the Mercy to pocket them to find value. And that deprives your front line a lot of support against the team who were already in the advantage in ultimate economy, point percentage, and presence around choke. And so you were effectively cutting yourself in half when you really could not afford it.
Yeah, Skeeto's having a hard time on Junket. It was the one kind of quote unquote trump card that Winton's had going into that, right? They say, we're going to run the Junkrat, we're going to run the spam, and we can beat you with that. But when Ray Dragon's DPS are sticking to him like white on rice, it's going to be a real bad time, because the Junkrat's just not going to get any value.
And they could have found value. The thing was, they threw in these ultimates extremely quickly. Taya came out, Deadeye came out, and all of them didn't have that setup that you really need at the moment. And we're sort of seeing every time a new change comes through, everyone's role on the team differs. Like, the last patch was very frontline focused, and it was the tanks who blazed their way on through, and if you had that tank difference, that was when it was really hard to claw things back. At the moment, it's all about setting your DPS up into the best possible position to use ultimates and actually get value for them. And so when a tire comes out, when a Deadeye comes out, you need to have something that's opened the way, that's paved open a path, something like a Shatter, something like a Graviton, but each of them came out individually, and each of them only found 1/6 of the value because of it.
Well, the team play wasn't quite there for wins, but Ray Dragon are going to be finding themselves proceeding on. Ladies and gentlemen, though, we have one more match to follow this and plenty more after that. It's going to be Mercury versus Vulcan in the intermediate EU, and it's going to be coming up in just a moment. Back. I promised you guys it'd be fast. We've got the second match of the day coming up here at the GitGud EU Fight for Redemption. It's Mercury taking on Vulcan to open up the intermediate series. On the side of Mercury, we're locking down Swekingdom, Sky, Crane, Durlk, Aver, and Bliss. Meanwhile, on the side of Vulcan, it's going to be Eternal Salt, Kryda, Lord, Hypers, Faraday, and Delete Brig fighting for one of those very few spots. Mox, that last match was extremely fast, and you can see just how quickly a team can lose control. What do you think these teams can do a little differently?
So the hardest thing, and I think this goes for all control maps, whichever one you play Lijiang, Nepal, and Oasis, is actually getting onto the point. And so I really do hope that we get to see a sort of revitalization of the Lucio, because as soon as you lose that first fight, sometimes you just don't get to see the point a single time afterwards. And if you have a Lucio, you can go for that speed boost, you can go for some really long wraparounds in a very short amount of time, because that's normally the punishment, right? If you don't have a Lucio when you're running an old Zenyatta with a Batiste, everyone's got to walk and drag their heels all around the map. If you've got a Lucio, everyone just sort of gets a fire lit beneath their behinds and move well a little bit faster, and that means you take less poke damage, and means that you're not charging up your enemy's ultimates at the rate of a supernova.
Yeah, and keeping track of the ultimate economy is one thing, but not letting it get out of hand for the opponent is a whole other thing. It's something that a lot of teams don't often have to think about. But in this really, really short format, that matters so much more than anything else. There's no time to adapt. You need to play as clean of Overwatch as you can now. And you need to be thinking about all the little things, every bit of charge you're giving that Zarya, every bit of damage that you're taking, every bit of damage you're putting out, even giving the supports potential ultimates matters at this point.
I mean, I hope that we get to see D.Va come through, because that's one thing you can immediately do that really forces every single player, no matter if you're a support, no matter if you're a DPS or a tank, into thinking very carefully about the timing of ultimates, of abilities. Anna with anti-nade, Zarya's with gravitons, Maze with blizzards. All of it just goes in one end of that D.Va mech, and you don't get to see it. It's just removed from existence. And if you've got a D.Va, then you deny a lot of ultimate charge for your enemy, but you also really put them into that horrible position where they can't just chuck in an ultimate to immediately win the fight. And that's what we're going to see a lot of teams do. That's what we got to see in that last round when there was a Graviton, when there was a Blade. Both of those came out as soon as they saw the whites, or rather the greens of their opponent's eyes. Because there was just nothing there that could really punch the aggression. You didn't have a div, you didn't have to worry about defense matrix, as we head yet again into Lijiang, proving my theory that there is no map on control that exists beside this one.
And now we're gonna head on to a different Lijiang map, though, right? We're starting out on Night Market, which has an extremely set meta, and one that we try and see broken. Everyone's like, oh, I'm gonna run spam, I'm gonna run an echo, we're gonna break the Symmetra strat meta, and then they just lose to the Symmetra strat. Please,
It's
for the love of
so
God,
hard though.
it's so hard.
If you go in against a Symmetra strategy and you don't have a Symmetra strategy, then you find yourself an entire team is suddenly in that position. You haven't been able to poke damage away at them at all. And the instant that you try and actually commit onto that point, there are 3 Symmetra turrets that you have to turn your attention to. And it tends to be run with something like a Mei on the other side as well, or an Ashe, something that's just constantly putting that pressure down, meaning that your DPS can't try to clear the turrets, it falls to your front line, and as soon as your front line turns around, well, the tanks on the other side immediately just come in and clean up house.
It's not a fun time, and already, I can speak. I play on multiple teams. Coming from this perspective, the semester strat, it's really boring. Nobody wants to do it, but you kind of have to. And Mercury are opting for the spam composition. They're going for the pulled pork. They're really bored of the Symmetra, but it may be their demise.
Oh, and even worse as well, if they stick with this, they're going to have a pharmacy, and pharmacy is very good at poking damage away, but when you're going to go up against an Orisa and a Reinhardt, you've got a lot of mobility with that shielding that's going to be available for Vulcan, so your poke damage is somewhat cut in half when it comes to value, and Ava is constantly going to be away from the team, which means all of the healing falls onto this Baptiste's shoulders. Bliss is going to be in charge of keeping up that Orisa, keeping up that Roadhog. And when you're going up against a Reinhardt, he does not care about halt hooks. He just moves past your Orisa shield and walks up to you and swings away with a hammer without a single care in the world, especially if you're sticking with Faraday on this Lucio, because then you have to worry about him being there in double the speed.
Yeah, the halt hook is a nice idea for Mercury right now, right? They're going for a full pick composition. A lot of times we'll see the double spam, we'll see Junkrat, Hanzo, we'll see Pharah Hanzo, we'll see Pharah Junkrat, trying to just break through these shields. And the Ursa Hog is kind of another version of that, but I think it's in a way going to be countered by the fact that there's just a Reinhardt on the field. No matter what halt goes on to that point, it's likely going to be catching Kryta, who just presses right click and denies all the value.
And I mean, there is one very small glimmer of hope for this team, though, and that's that Vulcan, we don't know what their second DPS is going to be locking into yet, aren't currently running hit scan, which means that if the Pharah goes ignored, then you do have a really good opportunity to find yourself some picks to do a lot of damage. But managing to turn doing damage into getting kills, and especially when it's night market, and it's almost impossible for a Pharah to get onto point and safely barrage. In fact, it's almost impossible for a Pharah to safely barrage. Just saying that sentence, every Pharah main knows. When you hit Q, it's not about how long you stay up. It's not about surviving until the ultimate runs out. It's a matter of the amount of people that you bring with you. And when you're doing that into double shielding, it doesn't really matter if the enemy doesn't have a hit scan. Your ultimate is going to be picking up nothing but dust and your own corpse.
Yeah, we've talked a bit about how Mercury can make their way into this, but Vulcan, they do have to execute relatively well, right? If they don't have a hit scan, then I think a lot more weight falls onto these tanks and the supports. Staying alive, even on Moira Lucio, is not exactly the easiest thing when there's rockets being constantly rained in on you. They're all going to be damage boosted. Then you have to worry about the sightlines of also the Roadhog and the McCree that are going to be shooting at you. If there's not a hit scan for Vulcan, that can lead to a lot of trouble.
If there's not a Batiste for Vulcan, that's going to lead to a lot more trouble. Because you can see what they're going for with that Lucio, with that Mora. You've got the fade ability, you've got the speed boost. So those supports, it seems like they're expecting some form of dive to come through, so that when they get jumped individually, they'll have a little bit more survivability, and you don't have that 25-second really punishing cooldown for Immortality Field. Not like how Moras can just fade and then a couple of seconds later fade again. but it means that you are going to be backed against the wall when it comes to dealing with ultimates. Because Coalescence is something that you can pair up with Eternal Assault Superchargers to get a lot of value, of allow your Reinhardt to go in with a lot of aggression and have a massive big old safety cushion behind him. But Faraday is going to be the only safety line for this team. And so if that Science Barrier comes online, it's going to have to deal with every single aggressive ultimate that Mercury throws towards Vulcan's way. And so if you play your cards right, if you force that Lucio into using that Science Barrier just a little bit too early, there is some real punishment that you can immediately drop on that team's head.
Yeah. And I totally agree. There's a lot of ways that Mercury can punish misplays by Vulcan. That's kind of what this pick composition looks to do. But let's talk about ways that they can win without having to rely on an enemy team making a mistake. Let's talk about those ultimates that you mentioned. They're extremely hard to counter. And when you have that 70% tick rate, you can rely on getting them much more reliably because you're not constantly watching that percentage rise, constantly worrying about the map ending. It is significantly slower, as we saw from the previous match. And you have a lot more time to really build those up, and you can plan those 4 to 5 ult pushes if you really need to.
I mean, if for Mercury you're looking at how they're going to go ahead with this and if Vulcan stick with this Symmetra strategy, the way that Mercury are going to be able to win this map is if they deal with that DPS. Because the Symmetra, if she survives and if she's allowed to have that beam fully charged up, is going to be putting down a chunk of damage. And Sweet Kingdom's shield is going to be around for a couple of seconds and then it's going to be saying bye bye and taking a little bit of a snooze, at least until 8 seconds later. And if you look at the DPS, you're going to have a McCree, so Deadeye, you're going to have a Farah, so Barrage. Both those two can be shut down by a really nicely placed Symmetra wall that just sort of flips you the finger as a sort when you try to pop that ultimate, because it's just going to immediately stop all of the damage. And if you're Dillick, you've even running the chance of blowing yourself up with your own rockets.
There's a lot of really risky stuff here for Mercury. It is a very difficult composition to execute. It is very reliant on what Vulcan end up doing, what composition they run, and how they execute it. But there's always that question mark that's now being thrown in. You've got one map, there's no time to adapt. And I think Mercury could bring it, could take it away. And I don't want to call it an upset, but it's always an upset when the symmetric composition goes down. Ladies and gentlemen, we're figuring out just how this one's going to go in just a bit. we're back, still trying to figure out with this disconnect what's going on, but I think we're getting the lobby all started up. Mercury versus Vulcan, of course, our second map match of the day. And it's been lining up to be an interesting one. You and I had a little chat, though, during the break about how Vulcan actually want to play this, because symmetric composition might not be as stagnant as we expected it to be.
Yeah, so you were quite happy to see Lucio, and you were predicting that it's going to be a very aggressive sort of double shielding composition. I feel like it's going to be just trying to get Lord into that position because everyone knows night market pops up, teams are going to be locking Symmetras in. It's all about getting set up on that point first. And as soon as you've got the setup, that's when you move to the proactive strategies of invading the other person's space if they're running a composition like this. Because you're going to have that Roadhog, you're going to have that Orisa, the Halt Hook combination available for Mercury. Which, there's a sort of silver lining, a light at the end of the tunnel for this team, means that you don't necessarily need to be set up on point to actually find picks. If you find yourself staring at that Symmetra strategy and not really wanting to walk past the front door, you can just plonk your shield down beside the point and halt someone into your team. And that's when this composition is just going to shred them. That's what everything is sort of rotating around. The halt comes through, the hook follows up, Sky goes for the flashbang, and Dillik from afar gets to spam a couple of rockets in, and they're just gone. And Vulcan don't really have,
Mox,
another
wait,
player either.
I figured it out. The ultimate counter to Symmetra strategy is just have the other team DC until they have to forfeit.
Just slowly players phasing away, and it looks, like we might not get to see that Symmetra strategy that we talked for so much about.
All right. Well, we're going to get to move on to our next match. Mercury take themselves away a victory. Unfortunately, Vulcan had the DC issues. They weren't able to field the full roster. So, commiserations to them. That's a really unfortunate way to go out and one that doesn't feel too good. But for you guys will be feeling just fine in a moment. We've got another match coming up for you. It's going to be Team Yakult going up against somebody who's not quite figured out yet. We'll be getting back with you in that in a second. Real good at keeping my promises right now. Every one of these breaks has been extremely short, so Team Yakult and Team 5-Head are ready to go at it here in our 2.5 if match of the day. I'll call it for the time being. Of course, bringing all the action at you, I'm still Dor, and I'm still joined by Moxie. We've only gotten to see one game played out today. We've gotten to theorize about two. Now we've got another on the horizon. How are you feeling about this one?
I mean, I'm hoping that we get to see some Overwatch be played out. It's always horrible when a team has to forfeit because of a DC issue, but you know, fingers crossed that we get to see a map that isn't Lijiang, because that's two Lijiangs in a row now. And I don't know, randomizer, something feels like that's been going behind the scenes just to make sure that we get all of the different maps of Lijiang.
Well, at least they're different.
Yeah, so
As long as we don't
coordination,
just see
we've
Night
got to be
Market,
heading
I'm
up to
happy.
Gardens now, right? And Gardens is every sort of DPS main's favorite because you've got your mixed bag of maps on Lijiang. Control Center, it's the Reinhardt's bread and butter. Zarya's, they love to be there. Night Market is where it supports Adore, especially if you're a Lucio main, you always go for those environmental boops off the point. Gardens is where Farah in hit scan reigns supreme.
Yeah, plenty of dive as well, right? There's always the question of, do you run the dive? Do you run the composition that wants to just take the point and then contest it until 99%? There's a lot of theory crafting that we can do, but I think a lot of it weighs down on the map that ends up getting rolled, right? Nepal is still an option. I believe there's one other control point map in here that can be chosen as well. I think it's either Oasis or Busan.
Oasis,
And
yeah.
it's
So a
Oasis.
lot of
Yeah.
dive there as well.
Yeah.
Hopefully, we just want to see old-fashioned dive, you know? We're not picky, we're not choosy. Genji recently got buffed. Diva managed to get her defense matrix buffed back from that 1.5 second cooldown to 1 second, which is one heck of an adjustment that a lot of people are still going to be getting to grips with, but it really does make it a lot easier to eat those ultimates. And do you know what? I don't know why we talked about Nepal. I don't know why we talked about Oasis. I don't even know why we talked about Gardens, because it's Control Center that we're off to again.
It's just an inevitability at this point. Lijiang calls. Jeff is ordained it that this is the only control map in the game. And you know what? At least the teams know what they're going to be playing on from here on out. Although this time it's going to be back to Control Center, like you mentioned. No Gardens quite yet on the horizon. And so, Yakult and Fivehead, maybe they can learn from the mistakes of teams prior. They have an opportunity here to come in and do something a little bit different. I'm curious to see, though, whether or not it's going to be that Ryan Zarya, whether or not there's some sort of double shield, or whether or not we see that Junkrat again.
So it's the sort of two different versions of Lijiang Control Center, isn't it? On the side of Yakult, who are going to be in the blue, they're running Ye Old Faithful, and emphasis on that old part. This is what we saw yonks ago on Control Center, that Reinhardt, Zarya, McCree, and Mei, where you try and take that first point and you move up to choke, whereas Team Fivehead are a little bit more current, the face of Lijiang Control Center, with that Junkrat, a lot of spam damage and heading into the double shielding variety.
Old school versus new school, but only one of them's going to be coming out on top here. Pixel is going to be a huge threat on the Mei. Look for this first wall to connect and put out serious amounts of damage. Therius, though, on the other hand, is trying to put out his own damage. And meanwhile, with the Occult on the point, that is free reign. The high ground given over to the Junkrat is not what you want to be doing. If you're Occult, you're already one down. That Mei's so important. The brawl to Reinhardt now. Magenta has free reign over the front line of the blue side. Yakult trying to fight back, trying to push their way forward, but they're being completely surrounded here as Magenta is anti-native, which gives them at least a little bit of reprieve in this fight.
Yeah, Yakult are so far back at the moment as well. They're giving Sirius all the space he possibly wants to work with, already 64% of the way up to that Riptire. Magenta, you shatter as well. Despite going to be coming in with a shatter of their own pretty soon, but it's going to be so hard for this Reinhardt to be able to, one, stay alive and keep his shield long enough to actually drop the hammer into the ground with all of the spam damage that's going to be coming straight towards them.
Absolutely a very difficult fight here for Yakult, but this one's also about building up ultimates. The wall will connect and give him a pretty good opportunity to move in. Your flashbang down onto Magenta, and down goes Magenta, shatter straight into the shield of Lazy Lizard, but the Deadeye is going to be sealing this one right back on out. 2 traded for 2 here, but Yakult have a great position on the point. They're starting to wrap their way around. Lizard, though, holding their ground as the Riptire comes in over top, and it connects onto 2! Fivehead have found their foothold back into this one, and they're going to hold on to Control Center.
Fivehead don't have to worry about the ultimate economy like Yakult, at least when it comes to sustainability, because Valorant's on that Batiste. So you cheat death with Immortality Field, you don't have to work your way up to the Science Bar that off-top has been crafting in these last engagements. But if you're Yakult, you've got a lot to work with in this next fight. Pixlor is going to go into the Junkrat, so you don't have anything to really follow up on the Graviton, at least ult-wise, but you do have that Nan to go into your right.
That is if you don't die as Gravitic Flux picks him up, Sound Barrier to counter, and then lays down the laws of physics. And it's not going to find much value, but what will be found is Despite, who goes down on the Reinhardt now, stands main tank. Yeah, Colt have to find a way to win this fight, using the Graviton even, committing everything to it, but they're just not getting any value.
Such an overcommitment on the Graviton. That's an ultimate that you want back. You may have longer in this round, but that's an ultimate that takes a very long time, and that should be swinging things immediately in your favor. You don't want to commit that when your number's down, especially with Feint now being 30% away from the Deadeye. That's the follow-up that you want from a Graviton, and now you're just not going to have that. 70% of the point about to come into the favor of Fivehead, and they've got all of the ultimates in this next fight. Yakult are going to have to eco push this one, but they're running out of time.
Yeah, Fivehead gonna look to be proactive here. Start off with the Amplification Matrix. Already find themselves two. A Creation and a Fire Strike, both amped up. No thank you. Your Colts are gonna have to deal with it regardless, though. And they're gonna lose 2 members for it. Now backing up on the point. Feint. Desperation. Deadeye from the Desperado himself, but not able to find all that much with it. Magenta, meanwhile, beaten up on his main tank, and off tank who've been completely separated from the supports. Shatter from Magenta for good measure. 90% cresting over the point. And we're getting into last fight territory, Mox.
Yeah, it's going to be serious still on this Junkrat, still doing so much spam damage. And if you're Yakult, you've got 5% of the point that you need to try and get this contest going in for, but you don't have the members. Lovely sleep coming through. Feint completely annihilated. No stagger for the Tracer.
And speaking of staggers, it's all about the staggers here for you, Colt. Make sure this overtime ticks down for as long as it can. We do see the Wrecking Ball come in despite getting extremely low despite his best efforts. But the main tank goes down regardless. Firebeast coming in for the follow-up, but it's not looking pretty here for you, Colt, as Fivehead look to take their rightful spot and move on.
There's a reason that we see a new age of Lijiang Control Center, the spam damage coming through to just sort of punish any team that tries to go for that old school way of thought. Mei was very strong on Control Center when all of the fights were orientated around chokes and small corridors, but now engagements happen on point, and that's a lot more open space. A lot of places that those tanks can just sort of move ever so slightly to the left or the right and not be separated out from their team by a Mei wall. And if you don't have a Junkrat from the start, your Tire may build up extremely quickly, but you need the space to get that spam damage coming through. And that requires a lot of effort, a lot of decision and control of the point before you can properly find the power with that pick.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And to add on to your Colts' issues in that map, the Mei didn't get any value in the first fight. It was the first thing to go down to the Junkrat if serious, and then you come in, you try and fight one more, you get up to about 60% ultimate charge, and then realize maybe this Mei isn't going to work. You swap away 60% of your ult charge, but by then, Fivehead's already taken a complete stranglehold of the ultimate economy. There's not much you can do, and we already talked about it a good bit before this. The second a team takes the ultimate economy, if you play well, you can roll that all the way through the rest of the map.
Yeah, and unfortunately, as well as that Team 5 had, they were running this Batiste. And so the way that you want to deal with a Junkrat composition is you deny them that space, you deny them the distance between you where they're just getting to spam damage in and poke away and build up a tire. So you have to move in, you have to occupy it. And so you try and just get into the fight as quickly as you can, make it a really close quarters engagement, and you try and get that early pick. But a Batiste, he's so painful. He's such a nuisance at dealing with things like Deathball because he immediately slows it down. All of the tempo that you had built up, all of the damage you took on the way to get into the fight, suddenly you feel it even more because an immortality field comes down. And all of the things that you're doing, swinging away, chipping away, that just becomes null and void. And the people who are going to just turn around and have an entire team at their back, and not only that, the point and the space that they've worked so hard to create, they get that time, they get that luxury to just turn around and deal with you while you're just scrambling with an Ana and a Lucio to try and make ends meet when it comes to that healing. Because Lucio, his healing is very good when it's a whole amount of people going in, and he's very good at getting from A to B with the rest of his team, but it's slow. It's not good at dealing with Junkrat, and Ana, unfortunately, she's not what she was. She's on the sort of support chopping block at the moment with those healing going down from 75 to 70. So now you've got to use your best utility, that anti-nade, on your team. Bionade has to come through at the start of an engagement to make sure you can still have that healing capacity to keep everyone alive, which means you can't put it into the enemy team. You can't deny them the support that you were desperately trying to keep up for your front line.
We could talk about that last match all we want, but we're all ready to hop into the next one here. We've got Eclipse Quasar taking on Spaghettification. And Mox, I think there's one thing we can both agree on. So we're just praying for anything but Li Zhang.
You know, we're a different side of Li Zhang. We've seen so much of it, but I hope we get to see Gardens. I really do quite adore the way that Gardens plays out, because I think Gardens is one of those where the stagger fight and where everyone's sort of at that 99-0, it's probably the easiest one of these points for that team to wrestle control away from the team with 99% because of the amount of people that you can just have conga lining onto that point with that open space, the moat. The Tracer can blink across, the Doomfist can punch across, the Mora can fade through, Lucio can just do Reddit Lucio things and hop across it, Hammonds can roll on, so you can really set up a nice stagger. And if you've got ultimates that are very close to coming online, things like Diva Bombs, Pulse Bombs, Meteor Strikes, you can wrench a fight back into your favor.
Yeah, and there's more time to do it as well. With that 70% tick rate, things get really interesting. And I know we're kind of theory crafting and we're assuming that we're going to get Gardens, but honestly, the way the night is gone, I can't expect anything other than that. Oh my god, no way. No way. No way. No way!
We can see the future. Confirmed. Let's go. It's going to be Gardens for the first time this night. It's going to be Li Zhang for what feels like the upkeep time.
Can we get the workshop code checked? Can we like go into the code? Somebody call up Jeff real quick, the Overwatch maintenance people, whatever we need to just get this fixed up, because Li Zhang's nice. It's an alright map, but I'd kill to see a little bit of like Oasis or Nepal or like something
it's
that's
the
like
King's Row of Control.
daytime.
You know, everyone likes Li Zhang. It's got a bit for everyone, and Garden's probably one of those the most, because you've got the environmental spaces, you've got a lot of aerial superiority that Forest can use to really dominate over teams, and you can run both Death Ball, Double Shield, and Dive, so take your pick. Any composition can find a lot of value here.
And Eclipse Quasar are already coming up with something interesting, but Spaghettification locking in the Genji. Mox, you and I have talked about Genji more than enough to understand that my 20% win rate Genji very much enjoys living vicariously and watching other people do well on him. So let's hope for PC Viking that he can pop off here.
Well, it's going to be extremely hard though, because the Genji's going to come through, but because Quasar's composition is so mobile, they're just going to run away from him.
Yeah, Quasar's composition, while mobile, is actually really interesting, right? You have this effective bunker core with the Orisa Baptiste, and then the rest of the team is on full dive duty, and so far it's doing work. The halt into the rocket from Me Too is huge! Now gonna try and just use a concussive blast to knock away that resurrect. Will successfully do so. They're not out of the woods yet, though. Quasar may have control of the point, but Spaghettification still have 5 members up. Make that 4 as Juju Man falls on the Mercy, and things slowly tick the way at the blue side.
But Spaghettification just don't have anything to really counter what Quasar were running with. You need to have a McCree on the board at some point, in fact, some point soon. Otherwise, those DPS are just going to run right over you. PC Viking still alive, manages to get Kadios. But Spaghetti, one Genji against the world, is only going to find himself staggering himself out.
Spaghettification taking down the Mercy is nice. Yeah, this team composition is so mobile that is barely going to matter. The Mercy can just jump right on out of spawn, use the Guardian Angel to reposition. And now, look at them encroaching on the point. Spaghettification, they don't know what's about to hit them. The dive comes through right. Oh, where are you going, Vacant? Falls down on the Ana. Dark will fall, though, for the side of Eclipse in return. And now, this is complete and utter chaos over the point. But Me Too trying to find some semblance of order with the barrage that connects onto 2. Driving straight back into this back room. All of that splash damage is just going to continue to add up here. Spaghettification, get a res and get a little bit more of a grip on this point.
Well, they are going to have this blade coming on through, but you don't want to commit that ultimate if you can help it with. You need to win it without it, so you can open up the next one with that nano blade that's going to be so strong, and you can see Spaghetti, they're doing everything they can to hold on.
Yeah, we're starting to see PC Viking really using those Genji buffs extremely effectively, not just using them for the ultimate there.
No, Dark is actually just going to completely deny that amplification matrix by boosting through the side of it, which means you lose one ultimate on the side of Quasar for pretty much nothing, but Spaghetti trade that Winston out for it.
We're seeing what I like to call the Lijiang Garden Classic right now, the Lijiang Garden Special, where it is just full contest all day, 53%. This point is not ticked over for Spaghettification, even though they've been in charge of the fight. Now they're slowly losing even that. Pulse Bomb connects onto PC Viking while he still has the Nano Blade up. Your Ana falls to follow it up, and now you're facing the real trouble. Me2 coming back in on the far, completely boosted up, and the damage raining down as the point is maintained for Eclipse.
So if you're Spaghettification, this blade needs to be bonkers. It needs to be huge because you were so reluctant to use it in that last fight that you staggered yourself out a good 25%. The thing is, this blade can be shut down by so many things on the side of Quasar, and a lot of those stem from how mobile this composition is going to be. Sammy's going to have that immortality field in case someone does get pinned down like Dark on that Orisa, but 0-2 does not need to worry about being bladed. And Kyrios, the minute you see that Genji, you fly up to your Pharah.
Oh, they might not even get a chance to use it. The Ana falls and the Nano Blade Dreams go with it here. The Concussive Blast will likely come in to deny the res. Going in with the Naked Blade, though. PC Viking gets in there regardless because the Resurrect came through. Is it going to be enough, though? Looking less like a sushi chef and more like an awkward middle school lunch lady with that knife. Now 0-2 coming in and cleaning up on the back end. Eclipse Quasar are going to be using their ultimate advantage to seal this one out for themselves.
Yeah, Spaghettification just not finding value of the composition that they were running. They wanted to just keep sticking with this Genji, keep sticking with this Tracer, because there's an argument Quasar aren't running specific counters to it when it comes to the DPS that you pick. There was nothing to really shut down the Genji, but there was nothing for the Genji to find other than play of the game. PC Viking will be taking that home as a consolation prize because Eclipse Quasar, they went for this very avoided-esque composition that we see with that Orisa, with that Hammond. So you've got presence on the point with your main tank. Meanwhile, Holly on that Hammond just goes and does whatever he darn well pleases, making sure that Spaghetti don't get the room to safely set up a backline, to safely have that Ana keep an eye and keep your DPS, that Genji, that Tracer, actually finding the value that their health buzz really does deserve.
Absolutely, and I think you hit up on the composition, but I don't think we put nearly enough weight on it. That was a really interesting take from Eclipse, right? The Orisa Ball is something that, while it's been done before in other places on Gardens, that is a very new take on how to approach the map, and it worked extremely well. It kind of brought the best of both worlds of the bunker composition while still having that staggered potential, and it paid off in both regards.
And it really shepherded Spaghetti as well to using the side rooms because they couldn't go on bridge because there's a Hammond. And everyone knows it's ingrained into every single Overwatch player's soul. If there's something that can boop you, if there's something that can bounce you on the other side, you never walk across that bridge. And so they're forced to go side room. They're forced to take much longer rotations onto point, and they're forced into very small, cramped up, close quarter spaces where the Pharah can just turn an eye to, look at the general direction, spam a couple of rockets, and know that you're going to find hits. And worse, they're not going to have that line of sight on you because you're prevented from seeing the Pharah from all of the walls that are surrounding you. So the Pharah gets a lot of damage, and you have no opportunity to take her out.
And not only can you not deal with the Pharah, you mentioned you can't go over the bridge because you're not running a full and proper dive composition, which hints at what I want to talk about right now, which is Spaghettification. They didn't go full dive. They ran an Ana, which honestly felt like a complete hindrance. It felt like they were walking with one less leg because you were constantly carrying around this really heavy grandma into White Room, forcing yourself to dive from horrible angles, and then trying to rely on your Genji to find some sort of frag on the backside. But you're putting yourself into chokes for this far to deal with you. It's like free real estate for her.
Yeah, and unfortunately, because your Ana was such a hindrance, you didn't have that healing coming through. That was constantly available for the other side. Quasar's supports were never really pressured down until the Mercy went for the res, and then the punishment was instantaneous. Every time that Mercy dropped down to try to go for a res, the Tracer was there immediately just one-clipping her straight back into the spawn room. But it happened twice. And it needs to happen much, much more if you're going to make any sort of argument for why you're lugging around in Anno, who's not getting the space, who's not getting the room to keep a Genji and a Tracer alive, who aren't managing to find value even when they are left unchecked. The DPS that they were running against did not have CC. In fact, no one on the side of Quasar had CC. They were just able to get out of the way. And I think failing to be flexible with your composition, and even worse, failing to find value with a composition that should be when there's nothing preventing you immediately from going back into that spawn room, that showed some real cracks on the side of your team.
Absolutely. It was a rough match there for Spaghettification. Eclipse Quasar are going to be coming out on top. But ladies and gentlemen, of course, we've got some more Overwatch to be played on the back end of this. It's going to be our first experience game of the day with Power Nappers taking on Project Nova Academy. We'll be back with you with that one in a minute. So keep your eyes on your screens and your butts in those seats. We'll be back shortly. Fox, guess what? Guess what? It's not
Tell
Li
me.
Xiang! Yes!
Celebrate, get the party poppers, come on. Balloons just rain from the ceiling. Long have we waited. Li Xiang overrated.
Nepal activated. uh, thank goodness. I was getting a little sleepy. The nighttime was really getting to me. Now we get to finally go to
I
a
mean,
map
we did the full circuit, you know, of Li Xiang. We got to see Control Center. In fact, we got to see Control Center. We loved it so much, we did it twice. We got to see Night Market and Garden. So now, naturally, the randomizer is taking us on over to Nepal, and we get to work our way through the free maps of this lovely place.
It's not a randomizer. It's just like a little hamster in a wheel. Every once in a while, he gets tired and just sits on one map for a while, and I think that's what might have happened there. Little do you guys know, yeah, it's the value behind Elo. We can only really afford the hamster. The computer was a little expensive.
You know, I think the Elo Hell Touch would be making the hamster a little bit of an otter and dubbing him Ollie and swapping for some really nice hats. But we did get a little bit of a tease of Nepal way back when, if you cast your mind all the way back before we got to see all those maps of Li Xiang, where we talked about Village and how you can run Symmetra strategies on Village. And we haven't really got to see the Symmetra in play today. We got to see it for, well, about 5 minutes, all while we were trying to fill and scramble as players unfortunately disconnected. So fingers crossed this time she can actually make it out of those spawn ships.
Absolutely, right? Power Nappers taking on Nova Academy. It's worth knowing what teams are playing here. On the side of Power Nappers, it's going to be Donnie, Cynex, Dink Dunk, Glemdall, Vert, and Cheezus. Cheezus? 10 times. It's not Cheezus, it's Cheese Eases. Like,
yes, it's all hail your Terry overlord.
And then for Nova Academy,
and their opponents who are going to have to worry about dealing with a little bit of a lactose intolerance are going to be Project Nova Academy with Saber, Polly, Tilted, Frost, Leitrim, and Sleepy. And with a name like Sleepy and heading on over to Shrine on Nepal, do you think, just maybe, we are going to get to see that full dive of our dreams?
Maybe. I'm actually kind of suspecting this double shield Genji composition that we've been seeing as of late.
I should have asked you a couple of seconds before they actually locked in.
No, I'm genuinely not just going off of what I've seen picked here. Like, it was what I was expecting coming into this map. Nova Academy not running the Genji kind of tells you a little bit about their hero pool, but I think they're just going to want to get on point and deal out as much damage with that Ashe as they possibly can.
But Polly's going to have a real hard time, though, because Cynics is just going to be constantly in their face doing so much damage, making sure the Ashe does not get a clear line of sight onto the rest of the team. And even if the Genji isn't there, you're going to be shooting through double shielding, and you're going to have to worry about Doni constantly as well, going for that hit scan versus hit scan.
Well, it's going to be a little bit of a struggle here to get past the composition the Power Nappers have put out. It is certainly a strong one. Starting out, they already have the position on the point. This Genji is going to start forming that backline. Power Nappers hit a huge dynamite alongside the halt from Dink Dunk. Now Cynex starting to farm up, gets dropped extremely low, taken down by the Sticky Bomb Seba, and that is a perfect engagement for Nova Academy. A great opening for them to try and capitalize on, with your main support falling and your main tank following after that. Saba now does not have the heals to work with. They don't have a front line to stand behind, and it only gets better for Power Nappers.
Yeah, Project Nova with the composition they're running, they've got the Mercy. They need to have control of the point to actually find value with that one, because you're going to be damage boosting Polly, but Polly needs to have the high ground, needs to have the space to work with. And until you have that Mercy just means that you're lacking healing, especially when you're compared to a Batiste. Burt may not be getting there in ultimate charge, but he's been doing so much to keep that front line alive. And even Jesus on this Brigitte, really making sure you can't pressure that front line, you can't go in too deep with this composition, you've got to deal with them from range.
Yeah, and dealing with them from range has already been a bit of an issue, right? With Saba going down, the duplication is up. They have an opportunity to move in with a slight ultimate advantage. Starting out on the Ashe here, they're going to try and charge over Bob to give themselves point presence. Dynamite over top doesn't really connect on all that much, but it will take down Cynex from Polly this time. Already gained themselves another man advantage, and Power Nappers doing anything but sleeping on the job, as Saba's going to lose the duplication without ever getting a Bob off. Now it's Polly's turn, though, to chuck it in and try and get a foothold here for Nova Academy, and they'll do exactly that. The Omnic wreaking havoc over the point, taking it over for Nova.
Oh, and Power Nappers, they committed rally just as they started falling. Door, that's an ultimate you can't now pop to try and get yourself through onto this point. And if you're Project Nova, you can win this poke war now. Because they're not going to have rally, they're not going to have that over shielding on their health bars until it is so close to that supercharges. Supercharges comes out, and that's going to force Power Nappers, even if it doesn't manage to pick up a pick on their side, to just wait. And that is when Polly can come in with some really nice dynamites onto this high ground ledge.
Time is going to be so key for them, right? You don't have ultimates, you really have time to build them up. Cinex is getting near one that you can use to win this fight, but Nova Academy are going to be coming at you extremely proactively with the sticky bomb, with the damage over top. The dynamite's big, a nano boosted Echo to worry about as well, and this push falls to bits right in front of them.
And one ultimate put in, one fight won. If you're Power Nappers, you're going to have this blade. Ding Dunk's going to have that supercharges. But there's a real danger with this Genji. Is he going to survive long enough to find the value? If he's able to get into the team, sure, supercharges plus that blade is going to do so much damage. Your backline is going to be cut in half before they even really get to comprehend what's going on. It's going to be so hard to close the distance.
No, Sable! Oh god, he got caught on the building, poor guy. Cinex coming in, trying to slice and dice his way to victory, but he's only going to be getting a hand full of frost knuckle sandwich right there. Can't quite cook up the 3-piece meal he was looking for, but instead the rest of his team is getting value behind him. Donnie finds one on the sleeve, he traded right back for his own main tank, and support is not what you want to be seeing. Nova Academy are going to look to maintain their hold on this point and take it over to 55.
Lutrium did not go down. Sleepy was dealt with, but the Mercy wasn't, and then the res comes through and there's no punishment. So all of the hard work that Power Nappers put into trying to get that Ana out of the way just poof, evaporates. Next now is onto the Torbjorn. So off the Genji, going to be trying to counter Saber with this turret placement, but you don't have that space. As soon as it goes down, well, Project Nova can just turn to the side and swipe it away.
Yeah, I'm not sure about this Torbjorn pick, but they believe in it. Nova Academy up on the point, down onto the ground they go. Physics remains supreme and reigns supreme, and Cynics goes down. Nova Academy still this double shield completely unmoving on the point, slowly getting pushed back though. Isaba gets a spare bomb in. This one in the previous fight is going to win him. This one absolutely takes down Vert on the Baptiste. Not that those main heals, it's all up to Jesus to try and seal it out, but absolutely not say Nova Academy as 90% goes over. We're getting into last fight territory, Mux.
Cynics is on to the Tracer, so you know that Power Nappers are getting desperate. They know that they need to touch soon. But Project Nova are about to come into a lot of ultimates in this overtime fight. Tilted already has that supercharges, and Frost is so close to just being able to shut this down with the Sigma Flux.
Yeah, there's an opportunity. Cynics is going to be getting the touch off overtime against its tick down here. And all that they can dream of is Cheddar right now because Jesus falls first. And now there's free reign. No speed boost advantage to be given over the way of Power Nappers. They don't have the ability to move in and out of the fight as they please. Overtime's going to tick down. It's all about staggers at this point. But the focus from Nova Academy is so on point that absolutely no value is going to be had.
Yeah, and Project Nova probably just comes into the bob as well. So even if Power Nappers are able to keep touching that point, there's an auto-aim locked onto their bodies. Project Nova walking away with the win. And Power Nappers, I think there was a real sort of difference in the DPS, not from accuracy, but because the other side was constantly being damage boosted. The fact that Lutrium was able to stay alive so long on that Mercy and constantly allow Polly and Saber to find so much value with just their normal primary fires. And Power Nappers, they couldn't do anything about it because they just weren't able to close the distance long enough to get the Mercy out of the way.
Yeah, and you're trying to make space with things like the Genji and trying to force the other team back using the pressure that you have given your team composition, but they just weren't able to find success. I mean, we both saw how that blade ended. It was not pretty for them. Project Nova have a bit of a way to go, but huge stuff from Power Nappers there in a really impressive display of skill.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see Project Nova move on through over to the playoffs as Power Nappers, unfortunately, aren't going to be able to close the distance in this fight for redemption. But we got to see it! Oh, we finally got to see a map that was not Li Shang, and it did not disappoint.
It also wasn't 100-0, which has seemed like a common theme throughout the day. That was really nice getting to see both these teams find at least a little bit of success. Now, though, we get to see Power Nappers take on B Swarm in the next match, and that's going to be a very very good one in and of itself. You've taken down Nova Academy, but there is some very big stuff. We'll see if they can swat them down, though, in just a moment. Go into the next match. It's going to be Nova Academy taking on B Swarm. We saw some great stuff out of Nova Academy, especially Saba on the Echo, but there's some more stuff to be taken on because B Swarm, they are a whole different menace, aren't they?
Yeah, and it's going to be a whole different map as well. So the curse has been broken. We got one map of Nepal, and now we get one map of Oasis as B Swarm just, well, swap into that lobby. And this is going to be a matchup, I'm sure, because we've got to see Project Nova in action. We know the composition that these guys found success with in that last series, and it was all about keeping fights at a distance. The front line, the DPS, all of these guys were making sure that they had so much sight lines, so much space to set up really nice, beautiful shots, and keep so much confrontation away from their backline. Project Nova had a very good team play constantly running throughout, and I think B Swarm, especially going on to Oasis, those are one of those maps that you can for real spanners into the works of carefully laid plans with flankers who just come in, intrude on your backline, and leave the place, well, looking a little bit like a frat party just ended.
Well, I'm curious to see what B Swarm run, right? Oasis is a very interesting map, whereas you can have Brawl in the places like University, you can have the dive when you head outside, and then you head to Gardens, and pretty much everything becomes a little bit viable. What do you expect to see, Max?
So it does depend entirely on what map. Because Gardens and City Center, you can run so many compositions, but University has a much more set staple meta. And that is, sometimes we see Double Shield, sometimes we see Rein Zarya. The tank lineup is always a little bit in the air, but the DPS lineup tends to be the same. Hit scan and something that has a little bit of that point pressure, so a Mei, an Ashe, a Hanzo, all of those guys can be matched up. Occasionally, we get to see the pharmacy come into play. And that's the Feast of Famine tactic. It either goes extremely well and you're able to full hold and your forward does not get taken down once and she builds up barrage every single fight because there's so much places that you can just spam damage into those small side rooms. Or she runs into a ceiling and then she runs into a McCree bullet and then she gets a Hanzo arrow through her helmet and she just doesn't find anything and a barrage does not even get past the 50% charge up bar.
I mean, at least it's a quick trip back to the respawn point. I think that's about the only positive.
Small mercies, you know?
If you really enjoy, like, you know better than anyone, Mox, that I am very familiar with the spawn rooms of maps, but I don't like being in them all that much. And I'm sure neither do the players of Nova Academy, who, if we see it Echo again up against a McCree, it might struggle. But out on this open map, I actually think this bodes very, very well for Nova Academy.
Yeah, this is probably the map that these guys wanted to show up most of all, because as soon as you have someone sitting up on that highlight right beside point, you control the tempo of every single one of these engagements, and so you can just park an Ash up there, put a Mercy Lily Trim on that pocket, and you keep them alive, and there's so much threat on that one DPS that the entire team sometimes has to turn around and deal with that before they can even bother worrying about the point. And in that time, well, the Ash isn't alone. You've got 4 other players who could just speed roll their way right on through your composition.
And now we see 2 very different approaches to dive as well. Beastworm going to be locking in a Pharah, which is interesting, without Mercy as well, might I add. Nova Academy, though, Saba swaps over to the Genji, something we haven't seen him on, and something that we didn't really expect because we saw him do so well on the Echo.
But Marb, I think, is going to go on to the Mercy. You just want to have a little bit of that initial speed boost out of spawn, especially if Polly's going to go for the Symmetra play. There we go, going to be swapping on through, but because Project Nova had that Symmetra, they should be able to get a point a little bit faster.
Yeah, that teleporter does make all the difference. Again, that high ground control matters so much. Neptune trying to go in and make a difference, but can't quite swing up there. Now getting forced back towards the Mega Health Pack while Textor just rains down barrages of rockets from on high. No ultimate required. See an early point take here for Beastborn.
There's nowhere for this dive on the side of Project Nova to go. You can't go for the front line because the front line is going to be in your back line. The only way that you can try to go towards is Emerald on this Ana, but they've been doing such a good job at keeping their position skewed. And the team have been doing such a good job as well as pulling so much aggro that Project Nova haven't really had the chance to go searching out for an Ana. Meanwhile, they lose their own, staggering out this next fight. They can't go without that main support, especially when you've only got that Lucio and you're already taking so much poke damage from Texter on this Pharah, who's about to hit 60% of the way to a barrage, which should be for free. You don't have to worry about a defense matrix. You've only got to worry about Polly, who only now swaps onto the Ash.
Yeah, this ain't pretty so far here for Nova Academy. Remember how much we talked about the Ultimate Economy, how much it matters, but they get 2 free picks off the start. Textor falls and Marv next to go gets greedy for the resurrect in a fight that Beastworm had absolutely no right winning. They come in with highway robbery and swipe it away from the dive composition. It's not over yet though, as Nova Academy still have a foothold on this point, and that foothold's name is Polly, who's dealing a ton of damage.
Yeah, but it's Seba who's going to be the star of the show in a couple of seconds. 98% to this blade. Mobs onto the Brigitte, so you will still have that shield bash. That's unchanged. Which means you've got a little bit more CC, and Rifler is going to be doubling down on that one. There's a McCree. They know what's coming, Duran. They are putting, well, everything available to them in their path to possibly shut this Genji down.
This is a lot of eggs in one basket. It is a huge commitment here from Beastworm, but if it pays off massively. This is feast or famine with this competition, but here it comes. Do or die. Here comes the blade. Rifler dies from the hero he was meant to counter, and Saba very happy with the value that they got out of that blade.
And unfortunately for Beastworm, you fucked up your entire composition trying to deal with that Genji blade, and you find nothing, and the fight ended so quickly you weren't really able to build up ultimates either. Emerald's going to go into that Batiste so you can have Immortality build to try and survive this next fight, but Project Nova, they don't really care about that one. They can pull it out with Polly having that fob available, and then Frost can just go in by all of the time you possibly want with these Hammer Mice, but you do have to worry about the Diva Bomb, because only Winston can block us with a bubble.
Tilted has a really good opportunity to move in. There's the bubble though. Early it comes, and down goes the bomb. Doesn't find any value. Nova Academy find themselves 3 onto the back line in that time.
Oh, and Polly's placement of the bob, not only placement, but timing as well. You send it in as Olisk is out of the mech, which means you can't peel for it, you can't defend Symmetrix in front of it, so your team takes the entirety of the brunt of that damage, and Project Nova cycling back to that win condition. Seba so close to that blade yet again, and Beastworm just not able to shut this Genji down, even with 2 lots of CC on their side.
Yeah, you're kind of nearing that final fight territory. Yes, the 70% tick rate makes it a little bit further, gives you a little bit more of a cushion. Oh my god, Frost coming in nearly gets massive value out of the swing, but can't quite connect and knock some people off the map. Now an awkward fight here by the Mega Pack leads to Neptuno, sending himself careening off the edge of Oasis here. Dancing around this bounce pad right now. Tilted is using it for infinite aerial mobility, while Frost is just taking people down one at a time. Off the map they go.
Oh, and there's a danger for Beastform now as well. You're approaching that final fight territory. Rifle is already on the Tracer, so you can try and get this point contested just a little bit longer. But now you have deprived yourself one form of CC, and Saber's got that blade. We've seen this Genji find value when there were 2 lots of CC on this side, and now Beastform have put that down by half.
Well, here it is. Immortality Field down, slicing and dicing his way on through, and this looks mighty tasty here from the Shimada bros. Seba finding yet another big one, and his team doing a fantastic job of following up on that is going to net them the map victory.
Yeah, Project Nova, if anyone tries to touch this point on the side of Beastform, you can just drop Hammond Mines in their path, and there is nothing they can do against it. Beastform, they tried to revert back to the traditional ways of countering a Genji and McCree with that flashbang, and Brigitte with the shield bash. But you were able to CC him up. We saw in that plate, in the first time he went through Saber, he got stunned up, but there was no follow through. They weren't able to kill the Genji, and so he recovers and he just goes straight after them once again.
Yeah, I mean, it's just WM1 less so than, you know, using your dash and using all your fancy abilities. Saber just walked forward and sliced him. And you know what? It works perfectly fine as long as Nova Academy are doing things like that. I can see some really great things in their future.
Yeah, this is a meta that's really going to favor this team because they know how to use that Genji. They know how to bully the Batiste into putting Immortality Field in just a little bit too early so that when the blade comes through, there's nothing that main support can do to cushion the blow. And all of Nova was so very good at holding on to ultimates, at knowing when enough is enough. They hold on to Hammond Mines, Primal Rage so many times we got to see in those fights when they'd already won it. Ultimates, they kept a handle on it, which meant that they could just cycle through and cycle through and cycle through. And when you've got a 70% tick rate on these control points, you have to have ultimates in the back lid that you can throw into these fights just to make sure that you're holding on to that point for a little bit longer than normal.
Well, we can talk about how that one went all day, but it's not going to change the result. At the end of the day, Nova Academy going to be coming on top yet again off the back of some fantastic play from all of their players. Now we get to see another match coming up. We've got at least 3 more in the EU region for you guys, so keep your eyes glued to the screens. We'll be back momentarily.
So you queue up for Overwatch Ranked, only to be greeted by this, which then leads to this, and oh no, Reinhardt, what are you doing? The solution? ELO Hell pickup games.
Hey, you know what? Just fucking do it.
Oh my god, it's huge! Oh no! Kill! Let's go!
Open to players of all ranks and most platforms, Pugs give you the chance to experience competitive Overwatch as it was meant to be played. Competitively.
I need help.
I'm with you.
Shoot.
No way, dude.
Go. Let's go. Nice. Good call.
Players set their icons to indicate the role they want to play, then two captains pick their teammates and draft the most competitive teams they can. You can also take part in our pioneering learning event, Coached Pugs. To take part, join the ELO Hell Pickup Games Discord, and be sure to read the Pug Guide and FAQ. Good luck, have fun, and we'll see you in-game.
Next match on board, we get to decide who's heading in here, who gets to move on. It's going to be Leroy's Revenge running up against Persephone, as it has been throughout the rest of the day. I am Dor, and I'm still joined by Mox. We've gotten to see a lot of fantastic Overwatch be played today. We're getting in to those final matches where everything is being decided.
And it's going to be another round of Oasis. We've both got our fingers crossed. We were discussing about it in that very short break. That is going to be University, just because I mean, University, it's nice to see the Reinhardt, the Zarya, even the double shielding composition, because it's all played around point and how you control point and how you manage to deal with that pressure on the point. Whereas the other ones, Gardens and City Center, the map is much more open, and so it tends to be that you deal with them in the first engagements before they can properly trespass on to get that tick percentage going in their favor.
Yeah, compositionally, I think Oasis is one of the most diverse maps that we have as far as control points go. It's not something like a Lijiang where everything's super duper set in stone and everyone's kind of running the same composition because they know what works. It's very, very map dependent, right? You have the brawls, like you mentioned, on University, you have dive and everything that can be run on the more open maps. But I think it opens up the door to having a team that's flexible being more important. But when it comes down to this one map format, that just goes out the window. It's going to be who is better right here, right now, at the composition that is good on this map. And if University comes up and both teams are forced onto something like a brawl, or you try and force a double shield into it, which could be risky in and of itself, we could see one of these teams really struggle.
I mean, if it is University, and if these guys do run with Brawl, there's that silver lining of it's a slow tick rate, which means you've got more time for fights. And Brawl is instantaneous. It is, you get in, you either win or you lose, and you're immediately out and setting up the next one. If you go for something like a dive, then you are wasting a lot of time until everyone's in their set positions. Dive can be extremely valuable, but just as difficult to pull off, to coordinate, because it's 6 people all jumping on what tends to be one target, one very small amount of space, and all with completely different ways to get in and get out safely with completely different cooldowns. And so it takes time. And time is one resource that these guys, they might have just a little bit more of, but that doesn't mean much in the long scheme of things, right? We're seeing that these teams, if you lose that first fight, and if that point percentage starts ticking up against you early, it's extremely hard to yank that one back.
Yeah, we've seen the ultimate economy be pretty much the most important thing. The first team to slip up and the first team to give away a fight without making the other team commit all that much, it just spirals out of control. No matter what division we've seen, we have seen extremely strong usage of ultimate economy to these players' advantages. And I want to continue to see that. I want to continue to see that because we're heading on to University, and I'm pretty sure we know what we're going to get here.
I mean, you've got to go Brawl. Sure. You can try to go Dive. And Dive can be successful, but it's also extremely hard to pull off multiple times. It works in that first engagement, but as soon as it becomes a defense dive, it's very hard to actually pull it off because Dive works by splitting teams. And if you split teams when you're defending a point, the other team, they're just going to see that everyone's committed, there's no one guarding that point, and they're just going to walk away because it's free real estate.
Well, when it comes to Brawl, there's no such thing as free real estate. You have to fight for it all, but if you back off, you get forced your cooldowns out. Yeah, it effectively does feel like that. And so whichever of these teams can give themselves that advantage, who can pressure down the tank line better or take out one of the supports, I think we will see finding some serious success. And both these teams taking very different approaches to that. Leroy's Revenge, they want to go for that more brawly composition and force down that front line. Meanwhile, Persephone is going to be aiming for the back line a little bit more with this Genji, looking to take down those support players. But Freak's going to be really hard with that immortality field. A very quick fight's going to come out, though, as both teams running Lucio. Both teams get the point extremely quickly, but Persephone have set themselves up with their double shield appropriately. Here comes the Doomfist Senpai up and over the top, and not much found. In fact, he's going to be going down himself. His Bacon Chicken just runs him down afterwards. Skyfall now taking a very, very interesting off angle here that has potential to do a ton of damage and take a ton of space, doing exactly that. Now, Leroy's Revenge, even though you're not running the double shield, they're making plenty of space.
Oh, and unfortunately you can't have your Reinhardt in the thick of things because Zeus's shield was breaking because of Skyfall just poking and pressuring away at it, and you've lost your Lucio. That's your best tool of engagement and disengagement, so you're just gonna have to retreat for now, giving up that point percentage, allowing Persephone the first tick, but also economy. We talked about it, Joe. This is where these teams can really run away with this, and Bacon Chicken's got a blade that can immediately be shut down.
Speaking of economy, though, that pick onto Skyfall is something that they can certainly take to the bank, right? Skyfall's been putting so much pressure onto that shield that this little bit of extra time is going to matter, but Leroy's Revenge taking their sweet time, waiting for the Brigade to come back up instead of taking the 5v5. They want to do a 6v6. Senpai into the ult he goes, and Bacon Chicken is going to fall for it. Now with the Amplification Matrix to follow up, there's going to be a lot of damage going straight on through this one, but Senpai is putting on a clinic of how to just harass tanks. Left and right, down they go, and Persephone are going to lose the point.
Leroy's Revenge doing a really good job of identifying the problem that they would be facing. If that Genji had stayed alive, it would have been a Nano Blade. And Din may have just gone onto the Brigade to get that shield bash, but you're still so far away from Rally, you don't have that sustainability of the ultimate. It would just be Freak's Immortality Field. And as soon as Muddy Puddle sees that one going through, that is green sign go for the Zarya. But Leroy's Revenge, they only delayed the problem. They didn't actually let the Genji pull out the blade, which means they're going to have to worry about it yet again.
Well, it's gonna be an issue. Bacon Chicken, though, we have seen some failed blades before. See if he can do anything different. Here he goes. Flashes onto the Brigitte. Will be the first to go down, trying to follow up onto this Immortality Field. Can't quite get it, but gets plenty of value off the back of it. Instead, it's gonna be Leroy's Revenge coming on in and holding on to the point.
Leroy's Revenge, because they're running this Doomfist, it doesn't really matter if your supports go down, because the Doomfist, he's got a little bit of a lifeline to himself with that ability, right? You manage to hit someone, you manage to get yourself just a little bit more shield, whereas Persephone, if their backline goes down, their tanks are just dead in the water. But they've got really key ultimates right now, Shatter and Graviton. If you're Leroy's Revenge, you're keeping your Batiste in the safe spot because Immortality Field is separating you.
No! Oh, Zeusor knew he had the Shatter and completely ignored the rest of his team. Tries to go for the backline. It's gonna allow Drunk Murloc to come in and wreak havoc with the hammer on this point. A massive mistake from the main tank of Leroy's Revenge opens up the door for Persephone. And my god, are they coming knocking?
Oh, Leroy's Revenge as well. It's going to be extremely hard to wrestle this point control back. Zeus has got that Shatter, but you need to be close enough to use it. And Persephone, we've already seen Skyfall really does take that Reinhardt shield quite personally, making sure that it's out of the way. Already, Zeus are going extremely aggressive and losing about half his shield's health bar before he even gets to shoot the team.
He does have the Shatter loaded up though, which can be a fight-winning ultimate if Deadlykin doesn't get this sound barrier online in time. Already bleeding out players. Persephone aren't even gonna get a chance to use that key ultimate as it's Leroy's Revenge coming in yet again off the back of Senpai's engage.
Well, if you're Persephone, you've still got a sound barrier though. And you don't really have to commit it into dealing with something that Leroy's Revenge are going to throw at you, so you can use it as a sort of insurance card for Bacon Chicken. Right, this Genji's going to be coming into Blade, and you can give him a huge amount of health bar, and no matter what Leroy's Revenge are able to do to that Genji, even if they see him out, it's going to be so hard to actually make the kill stick.
Yeah, even the Immortality Field wasn't enough, but they did make a very aggressive engage last time. It was Skyfall going down. This could ward off Persephone for at least a fight here.
Bacon Chicken goes down before the Genji can Blade. Persephone taking just a little bit too long to set that one up. Dora, now they've been staggered out. Now they are going to be coming towards this final fight territory. And if you're Leroy's Revenge, you've built up this rally, you've built up a supercharger, you've built up things that you can put in Bacon Chicken's path to make sure that this blade, even if Deadly Kitten's able to get that barrier online to buff at the Genji's health bar into unknown territories, does not find the value that Persephone needed to.
Yeah, Persephone now coming in. You've got the key ultimates, but you need to win this fight. It is now or never for them. Remember, these are their playoff hopes on the line, looking to make their way in. Bacon Chicken starting off with the blade, nanoed up, but not many people are falling. As I say that, though, slicing his dice and picks up 4 to his name, and that's the way to start out.
But so much was used in that fight because Persephone knew they had to win it. And so they committed Deadeye, Blade, Shatter, Barrier, Nano, all to make sure the Blade find value. And now they have to win each of these engagements, and these engagements are going to be long. If you're Leroy's Revenge, you've got a real window, and that window isn't going to be closing anytime soon. You can just eco push and build up ultimates and wash over Persephone.
Yeah, Persephone are going to struggle in this match. Not, though, if John Downsons goes down. And now Leroy's Revenge, that dry push, you no longer get to have that. You no longer get to build those ults.
Well, Zissa is very close to that
Oh,
shadow.
come on.
Freak! The one player you needed to stay alive, your main support, the Immortality Field denied,
Oh,
the Axe denied a second time! It's all bought the space, it's all bought the seconds needed for Muddy Puddle to build up to this Graviton!
You know, the free real estate may not exist in our world, but in a place called Oasis, I'm not too surprised to see it found here by Persephone. Skyfall's more than happy to clean a lot of these up. Now creeping along this side, using that 6-shooter to the best of their ability, but they're gonna have to disengage on the point so they can find a proper brawl. Graviton out, a lot of damage being thrown into it, but at the end of the day, it's Leroy's Revenge finding a ton of value out of that Immortality Field, keeping them up beautifully from free.
And that should be them able to take this map. Persephone won't be able to get a touch, and they had the tools. They had the Graviton. They managed to catch so many underside of Lyric Revenge up in it, but they didn't build Freak. They didn't manage to put that Batiste into the scenario needed to put Immortality Field in early, which meant Graf comes through and Immortality Field blocks all of the damage that it should have been finding.
Yeah, that should have been a lot better there for Persephone, right? You already got those 3 picks. You had found your way into the ultimate economy. You mentioned earlier that Leroy's, they had the opportunity to just build up ultimates. Persephone robbed them of that by getting those picks, but then Leroy, they come in and they just win a fight they had no right winning off the back of a massive immortality field from Freak. And that's the kind of clutch plays that you need if you want to be moving on.
That's the kind of clutch play that a lot of people are suddenly arguing on whether or not that Immortality Field should be a cooldown ability or whether it should be an ultimate, because it won them the fight. If that Immortality Field had not been there, the amount of people that were caught up in that Graviton, they would not have been able to recover, even if they had ultimates on their side, and those they were lacking because they got staggered out again and again and again because they held just a little bit too close. And the fact that the Ash goes down once, returns to the spawn room, and then tries to get back to the team and immediately goes down afterwards shows that there was a problem with positioning. But all of the problems Leroy's Revenge had did not matter because of that one Immortality Field coming in absolutely huge.
Oh, they've got the clutch factor. They're going to get to move on for it. We're moving on to the intermediate category. We've got one seeding match coming in. Both these teams have proceeded on, but it's all about where you get to place yourself in that bracket. We'll be back with that match, ladies and gentlemen, in just a bit. are, ladies and gents. Second to last match of the day here for GGEU. And Modern Crusaders look to take on Blackjack Aces for that seeding spot. Mox, it's been a long day. You holding up? You doing all right?
Yeah, I mean, it's nice that we got to see a whole lot of Overwatch, and that match I think was the closest of the days. So if they climb in closeness, this one, that overtime bar should be going on for at least a minute straight,
That's a scary
which is
proposition,
going to
especially
be
on
horrible
Nepal.
for you.
I mean,
But
we
I just
already
get to
saw an
sit here,
insane
you know?
hold. We saw it happen on Gardens, right? With the dive competition just contesting forever, then maintaining their hold. These things can go a really long time, but Nepal has been a very, very interesting map. And I'm thinking of one in particular. I think you might be as well when we talk about this, and that's Sanctum, where those holds can go on for ages.
Yeah, but not only the holds, the halts. This is where Orissa's they just call it home. You know, some maps you ask a tank player what they want to be, and everyone just kind of just immediately shies away from Orisa. Not on Nepal. Nepal and Ilias. Ilias well, I think are the two maps where Orisa, if they published statistics for heroes picks, would probably be top crop of that tank pile.
Absolutely. You don't have to opt for the double shield. It's a powerful strategy, especially like you said, it is just the home of Orisa. But in recent time, it's kind of like Lijiang Garden, in where you can run a dive composition, just contest for a really long time as well with this whole Junkrat renaissance. Even prior to the most recent bust, Junkrat has been incredibly powerful on Sanctum. And so I would love to see that kind of thing played. However, there's two other maps that we can start talking about, right? Garden, that super duper divey area, but you can still run all sorts of different compositions. We're going to find out here in just a moment what we're getting into.
I've got my fingers crossed for Sanctum. I know that you are, and we're both wrong. It's going to be Village, and you can try to dive this, but dive does tend to be hindered by the small fact of a ceiling being plunked onto the top of point. And you have those two entrances, and this is why we saw this map after map of Nepal Village being May, more May, and then after that, even more May.
Yeah, I feel like it's exactly what you're looking for right now. And honestly, I love that we've come full circle. We started off the day talking about Nepal and then not getting Nepal Village, and now we get to finally play a little bit of Nepal Village.
Yeah, but we're not seeing any Mays at the moment on either side of the team. And look at what Blackjack Aces are currently teasing. If they see this Doomfist coming out, then you can put that May on, because no Doomfist wants to go in, no matter. Well, there we go, Doomfist gone. No Doomfist wants to come out of the spawn ship, it seems. But Modern Crusade is going to be putting that pharmacy in. And so this is, again, that problem with the pharmacy. It has to be doing something constantly, otherwise there is just no reason for why you are going to be depriving yourself of 50% of the possible healing for your team.
It's a scary, scary proposition here, but now we see Carden coming in on the far. That spam damage looking to be absolutely critical to how they hold this point. Blackjacks, meanwhile, they're just stuck on the ground. There's not much they can do about this. They're looking for support picks. They're looking for this one onto the McCree. Aerith falls first, and with the sleep dart miss, Akan will follow. This is not going well for Modern Crusaders.
Oh, Blackjacks with the beautiful, so clean pincer movement. Tracer goes into the backline, does a little bit of a chip, just enough to make Modern Crusaders turn their attention away, and then the rest of the team with that brawl composition just collapses right on the Modern Crusaders. Though they do have that little bit of an opening, right? The saving grace of not running into hitscan on the other side. But you just don't have the spatial control that a Pharah needs, and Blackjack Aces are playing around the fact that they're dealing with a pharmacy without a hitscan by just moving away from it.
Absolutely. Now with so much point presence, they have the way to go. Choo-choo looking for this shatter to come up big. I think everybody in the lobby knows that he's got it, but there's not a shield to block it anymore as he finds the fire strike down onto Venero. Is there the follow-up damage? Absolutely. Olaf coming in on the flank and laying out plenty of it.
Well, the Pharah putting barrage in, you've got to swap. You're not finding anything with this barrage. You've got the Mercy, you've got the Valk, but Valk is just not an impactful ultimate. And now that we're going to have the swap off the Pharah onto the Doomfist, I would hope that we're going to see the Mercy get swapped up as well, because Blackjack Aces, they've got the engagement tool, they've got the Lucio, the speed boost, and that's something that Modern Crusaders are really lacking.
Well, now they've got an engagement tool to work their way in. Let's see if they can open it up. They do find an early one down onto the Ana. Down goes Suckboy, but up goes Carton's kill feed. Can they find another? Absolutely. Connect down on Alpha Chew and take care of that DPS threat in the Zarya. That's going to be enough to take over the point.
Modern Crusaders saw that Blackjacks were just ignoring the Pharah rather than turning and dealing with her. And you can ignore a Thora, but you can't ignore a Doomfist. Doomfist comes in, there's so much just immediate places that he can go to, immediate places that he can slam people's bodies into, but that swap off your composition means you don't have ultimates necessarily to deal with what Blackjack Aces are going to be coming in with. Grab and Blade, we saw it earlier on Li Zhang, be so intrinsic in matching to shut pushes down. Blackjack Aces have that now.
They do have it. Oh god, down goes Cicada. Oh, you thought you were gonna Nano Blade. No, you're not. Cicada falls, followed by Olaf. And Modern Crusaders, they're down in ultimates, but not down in the fight.
It's a little bit of an overinvestment on the side of Blackjack Aces. They tried to nano Cicada in the hopes that he would survive that charge, but Modern Crusaders just are not going to allow that to happen. And now Choo Choo is at risk of being staggered out, but it's Olaf who tries to go for the surprise pulse bomb and whiffs it completely. Now you can't combo that up with the Graviton, you've got to go in with the Blade.
Yeah, you're kind of running out of combos right now. Yes, you have the Blade grab, but if this doesn't connect, if this doesn't hit big, you are in a world of hurt. I'll tell you what does hit, the Shatter connects. Now the Blade stunned out, not finding all that much value, slicing and trying to get somebody down goes Venera. Olaf and Choo Choo traded right on back though. It's DPS for DPS and tank. And the kill feed lighting up all sorts of red and blue, but it's not going to be enough here quite yet. This fight has been far from decided, so Lucia's going to be contesting this point for a while, but Modern Crusaders have muscled their way back in off the back of a huge res from Tom.
Yeah, the res was worth it. The Mercy trades out their life, but you get the main tank back in, and that forces Choo Choo to worry about where you want to put the Shadow. Forces them to hold on to it, and Modern Crusaders keep control of this point, even though Blackjack Aces throw so much to try to take that point into their favor. And now, if you're Blackjack Aces, you don't have anything to see yourself through this Graviton combined up with a Meteor Strike.
Well, Choo Choo again has another Shatter, and if he can get a good engagement, which absolutely not. Never mind. You know, what was I even saying, Max? I give him some sort of chance, but the Graviton just comes out so early.
I mean, the Graviton comes out, and then immediately after the Meteor Strike comes through, because Blackjack Aces, they're not running that Batiste, they don't have Immortality Field to cushion the blow, and Falk did not have Sound Barrier online. But if you're Blackjack Aces, you have a lot of ultimates online, right? Modern Crusaders were able to win the last two fights, but they put so much into it. You need to win this fight, but you've got the tools to do so.
Oh, but you're already down 2 here. 86% cresting over the point. Shadowlands down onto a bunch of people right now, but it's still Modern Crusaders in the feed, cleaning this one up. Olaf is sitting around for just a point touch.
Well, trying to get a little bit of a pulse bomb touch, but unfortunately not going to be picking up any kills. Choo Choo's onto the Winston, Cicada onto the Doomfist. But you can reset your ultimate bars and you'll revive your Tracer because you tried to touch a little bit too late.
Yeah, I mean, the second they lost that previous fight, this one was pretty much over. We mentioned his last fight, Territory, but this is just hard to watch. Modern Crusaders are picking them off. They're having a field day hunting season out in the village, and there's not much you can really do. Overtime's going to take down Modern Crusaders. They set themselves up in the higher seed. Blackjack Aces, though, they're not going to cry on home. They still made their way on in.
Yeah, but I think if you are Blackjack Aces, there's something that you should have immediately swapped onto as soon as the Doomfist comes out. McCree, some form of CC. You tried to ignore the pharmacy, and you were able to ignore the pharmacy because the pharmacy wasn't getting picked. But when a Doomfist is able to enter a fight and gets 2 people in his opening hour, that's when you know this guy is going to be a constant problem, and it was a constant problem they were just not equipped to deal with in each of those engagements.
Whew. It's been a long day, Mux. We've got 1 game left. Eclipse Quasar takes on High Coast Esports. And you know what? We're going full circle. We got to see a little bit of what Eclipse had to offer up earlier. We've learned a lot throughout the day. I think the 70% tick rate actually changes things up a good bit. It gives teams a lot of opportunities to move in. But even so, even with all those opportunities to build up your ultimates, we're still seeing relatively dominant pushes from most of these teams.
Well, I mean, there's one big thing about it. You may have more time, and that does allow you to build up to some really powerful ultimates. But right now, powerful ultimates are negated by one tiny little ability that has a 25-second cooldown. And so when you've got longer rounds, you've got more immortality fields, which means you've got more backline stability, more pressure to put onto Batistes. And some teams just haven't really adapted to that flow of thinking just yet. And it's something that I think a lot of people are still coming to grips with. Batiste was a real problem when he first got released. He's going to be a real problem still. And especially with the break going away as well. Break was so good at making sure that things just couldn't go into your backline. So it's sort of ingrained at the moment in everyone's minds that you can't go for the backline without immediate punishment being there. shield bash CC, something that immediately takes you out of the fight. But now Brig is gone. That should open the floodgates for the flankers. And that's what we're seeing. Some teams have those flankers. Some teams go for the Doomfist. Some teams go for the Genji, and they're the ones that are finding value as opposed to the other teams who try to take the fight to the front line and fail.
Absolutely. I think one of my favorite parts, though, is the fact that it's been so different. We've seen Echoes pop off. We've seen Genjis pop off. We've seen McCree's pop off. We've seen the Doomfist. We've seen the Tracer. We've seen all sorts of different DPS heroes come in and shine. It's something that we haven't seen in Overwatch for a really long time, and it's honestly really refreshing to me.
I mean, that's the meta that we're in. It's the DPS flashy meta, where you have the supports, you have the tanks, everyone just doing their best to set their DPS up with the best. Because Genji Blades, you don't need the nano, but you need the space. You need to have bought out the CEC from the other side that can shut your Genji down, because now that Brig's gone away, not only don't you have that backline protection, you don't have the armor packs to immediately overheal a Genji. And sort of, you know, when you send your child off to university and you give them so much stuff, like 6 weeks worth of food and way too much kitchen utensils, like you can't do that now. You can't just weigh them down with armor packs so that they survive the ultimate. You've got to put the other tools in, things like shatters, things like gravitons, and that's why we're seeing a lot of teams really, when they want to blade, everything including the kitchen sink goes into making it happen.
Well, plenty of DPS plays have been made. There's plenty more to be had. We've got one last game for you guys. Eclipse Quasar and Blackjack Aces coming up in just a bit. gentlemen, the final Get Good EU match of the day. We've got Eclipse Quasar taking on High Coast. This is bound to be a good one. Eclipse Quasar, a team that showed us some incredible creativity earlier on Lijiang Garden, and a team that impressed, I think, both you and I, Mox. What are you looking forward to in this match?
I mean, I'm just wondering whether we're going to see Lijiang again, because that's going to play right into Eclipse Quasar's hands. Out of all of these maps, I think you've got Oasis, Nepal, and Lijiang all in play. Where else are you going to find more value running this Orisa Hammond? Because if it's Sanctum, yeah, that's going to work, but trying to run Orisa Hammond through Village, or trying to run it through Shrine, going to be pretty hard to pull off because it's just not quite as open, and there just isn't the space for the Hammond to properly work with. Right? If you look at gardens, there's spin cycles that you can set up, there's environmental kills that you can go for, there's some really, really speedy rollouts that a lot of Hammond players spent many, many hours painstakingly putting their muscle memory through. And it's really nice as well to see that the Eclipse Quasar have built this massive big old composition all around the space that their tank lineup provides, because we saw the pharmacy that they got to do. The pharmacy found so much value because no one was looking at the Pharah. Everyone was too busy making sure that a Hammond wasn't rolling into that composition and sending them back to respawn.
And with that space, right, their supports also weren't going down, which is massive, because I think that was a big difference between them and the team that they ended up playing prior. The team that they played ran dive into them, they ran an Ana with it, that was just getting farmed by Me Too, and I feel like they have this very strong fundamental understanding of where they can and can't be on this map, because while the Orisa does provide a fair bit of space, so does the Hammond, and they work around that Hammond and how dynamic it can be extremely well.
Yeah, Hammond sort of acts as a massive big old pinata. And everyone knows that he's filled with stuffed up with goodies. But you still have to actually be able to connect the kill onto him to pick up those goodies. And so a lot of people go for the Hammond rather than the rest of the team. And if you're ignoring a team, the team is going to be hitting their shots 9 out of 10 times. But it's not going to be Control Center or Gardens. It's going to be Night Market. So you can still run the Orisa Hammond. But it's a lot harder to pull off, because instead of going through main, the Hammond's got to move in through these side doors, which means he's ever so slightly more predictable when it comes to that movement pattern.
That's a sadistic pinata. That is... It's just...
Oh, you don't want
Sorry,
to come
can't get past it. That is,
some
you show up
pinata
to a
parties
Kyle's
later?
birthday party, and there's just like a hamster on a string.
I mean, okay, if they can build Bastion skins to fall apart like Lego bricks, and if they can build Pharah enchanted armor packs to fall apart like little bits of metal, then I want for the anniversary skin next time around, Hammond's pinata ball.
A girl can dream, let's say that much. Eclipse Quasar, though, they're coming out on the same composition.
No
even though it's a completely different map.
No,
this is going to be hard.
This is, okay, so they're going to be extremely mobile, but they're not going to have that massive big old group team teleporter. Right, so Ollie on this Hammond, he can provide a lot of distraction, but he's going to just be chunked down by Hazecat's turrets before he even gets to find any sort of pick.
And we talked a boatload about this, how hard it is to push into the Symmetra. A huge opportunity here to get the concussive blast off the edge of the map. Oh my god, Ollie again! He's doing what he does best. Knocks down Marshall off the map. They go. A boop, though, onto Ollie. He's going to send him down that same exact gap. Dark has been recognized. They see the weakness in the composition that Eclipse have chosen. Now it's all up to Me Too to try and find a little bit of value on the back end. Now that there's no main tank in the way. 0-2 starting to clean up, getting a lot of damage out on the Nuke Fist, starting to even up these numbers, but it's slowly falling the way of High Coast.
Well, Eclipse Quasar have a presence outside of point, but as soon as that fight moves on to point, they've got nothing, because they've got nothing to deal with the Symmetra turrets. You've got Poke, you've got 0-2 going to be trying to go for these 1v1s in High Coast. They know this problem. They can just hide up in this point, and there's nothing Eclipse Quasar can do about it.
Yeah, there was a little bit of an issue avoiding Ollie earlier on the Wrecking Ball, but now that you're set up on point, now that you know what you're playing up against, High Coast are going to feel very, very confident about their ability to hold on, as Ollie already being dissuaded away with those turrets. Hazecat sets up a bit of a farming center here with that teleporter, can go back and forth to get themselves a little bit of value. You see nearly up to that particle barrier, which is going to be super duper important for how they hold this. Me Too. Sneaking around with the barrage. Do High Coast know that he has it up already, though? He's taking a fair bit of damage, but 0-2 finding big. Oh, make it 3 onto the heroes on the side of High Coast. They don't last all that long when they're stuck with the Pulse Bomb.
It's the mini grab. Dark with the Orisa Halt manages to net 0-2, double the trouble with that Pulse Bomb, and opens the door for Eclipse Quasar. A door that they really needed opening because the trouble with that Symmetra they would not have been able to deal with properly. Now they've got the space, they can set Me Too made up for a really nice barrage, especially because HazeCat just was a little bit too early, too optimistic with that Symmetra wall. You can't try and block him out.
Oh, Me Too. They forgot about him too. With 2 more kills in the feed, it feels like these DPS players for Eclipse can do no wrong.
High Coast going to be swapping off the Symmetra, going for a hit scan, going to be trying to take Me Too mate out of the sky. And you do have a really nice line of sight onto this Pharah. There's not a lot of places that the Pharah, if she's playing on main, can really hide around. And so HazeCat might be able to net themselves that head.
Oh, and this is a world of hurt right now for Heikos. You've been bopped up and knocked around straight into the minds of Ollie, and that's a lot of damage. Me Too's gonna be cleaning it up happily from the skies on the far 5 ultimates, but Heikos don't even get to use 1.
Oh, Eclipse Quasar, they have this sort of supercharger as well, which you can use to cycle your ultimates back. It supercharges your ultimate economy, right? And Ollie is looking to get a really speedy finish to this push. He wants to knock someone off, but he's going to recognize that it's perhaps not the best shot. It will mean depriving his team of a massive big old health bar and charge up to the Hammond point, which can be intrinsical in shutting High Coast down if they go for these really cramped up quarters.
Oh my god, they have 5 ultimates, so they only need to use a couple of them to amplify that damage up and take down the players of Eclipse Quasar. Still, that Pulse Bomb always a threat, going to be putting a lot of damage down onto the main tank of Eclipse. Now, can they follow up on that damage? A lot of pressure being applied, and High Coast have played this beautifully.
Eclipse Quasar, they got very aggressive with sending Ollie right into the enemy team. And suddenly, he really is not where he wants to be, and that puts a lot of stress onto Sammy to try and keep the Hammond alive, which means you take your focus away from Dark on that Orisa, and she becomes so vulnerable. She's so hard to maneuver out of trouble. And the team High Coast, they see that, they take advantage of it. And now Eclipse Quasar, they need to try to win this fight. Dark's still holding on to these supercharges though. And if you combine that up with Sammy's amplification matrix, High Coast are going to have a lot of damage coming their way.
Yeah, Me Too as well as the Barrage. Going to be trying to sneak on in with that one. What? Namsu, where are you going, bud? Come on. Off the edge of the map he goes. Nothing to even cause it. Maybe he got touched by Ollie, but honestly, I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt there. Sent himself off on that one. 2 more picks. Make it 3 from Me Too. And all those ultimates that Eclipse Quasar had talked about don't even need to be used.
Oh, High Coast, because Namsu goes off the map, it puts Namsu into a really horrible position. He has to put Shatter in to try and deny Eclipse Quasar the capitalization on the fact that they've got the numbers advantage, which means you lost the fight and you lost an ultimate that you need back, especially with the amount that are going to be available for Eclipse Quasar as we come towards this final fight in HazeCat. If you had a Shatter right now, the setup for the Deadeye would have been perfect, but you don't. You've got to take the high ground approach.
Icos are gonna have a hard time pushing in the same exact mindset up here from Ollie. It had massive effects last time. It's gonna do the exact same thing every single time. Quasar press Q, 2 people die. It's on-demand kills.
Icos, they're going to swap as well. They're off tank onto the D.Va, so they know Me Too mate's got a barrage and they need to try and shut this one down, but it's that final fight. 9% of the way until Eclipse Quasar are going to win the fight, and they are not letting them leave this spawn.
Absolutely not. Namsu comes in, will get a touch off, but at what cost? We're already seeing Heiko start to swap over to the stall heroes. HazeCat onto the soldier, Namsu onto the wrecking ball, just praying for anything, but Namsu's coming up big on the tracer. 1 HP left, but Sammy takes him down. Now coming for the touch. Wide SBB happy, has a good opportunity to at least try and stagger this one out, but Me Too with the barrage is always going to be a threat. The Mercy healing him up, keeping him alive. Shielded and immortality feels so much value being come out, but a beautiful defense matrix gives them a shot. High Coast have a foothold in this fight.
Yep, it's going to be though, you lose your mech, so the defense matrix gone. And there's an amplification matrix on the field, and there's no one on the side of on the point! They left it, They arguably, okay, amplification matrix goes down. No one wants to be anywhere near that, especially because your D.Va just lost her mech, which means you can't eat the damage, but you've got to have the presence on the point to keep that overtime bar ticking up.
Li Zhang has claimed another life. Another team falls at this map that just seems to be the crux of so many players. I have to hand it to Eclipse Quasar, though. Every single time, they just ran their composition, and they are so damn good at it they can just make it work wherever. And massive props to players like Ollie, players like Me Too, players like Dark, who are under a ton of pressure playing this split composition, but still getting insane amounts of value out.
I mean, the split composition, they played split when the fight was starting off, right? You had the Tracer being all the way away from the team, doing a lot of harassment with those pulse pistols. But as soon as the fight goes on to point, they just mesh. And those two halves of the composition form up to be one. And I think it really is clearest to see when pulse bombs come out. As soon as pulse bombs come out, Tracer and Orisa, they sort of go for that fusion howl play, right? And you see the pulse bomb come out, and you know that there's going to be a hole immediately following it up. And so that nets you damage with the pulse bomb because you're caught in its vicinity, even if it doesn't get you a pick. And if you're damaged, Tracer can still just one clip the rest of your health bar away, and the Clip Squares do a really good job at providing real threats on all sort of forms. Every single one of those ultimates was put in to good value.
Whew, that was a crazy back and forth map, but I can't think of a better way to end our day, Mox. But as for Elo Hell, the matches are not over. There is more Prospect Cup coming up after this, ladies and gentlemen. You are going to want to stick right on around for that. As for Mox and I, though, that's going to be all we have for today. Thank you guys so much for watching. We'll catch you later.